Right, well, hello and welcome again to technically, I guess, the first Desert Island Drams of the new year of 2021. I'm Simon Smith of Whiskey and Cynicism, as I'm sure you know. I'm thrilled today to welcome an old friend of mine who I've not seen for quite some time due to the fact that he's in the Antipodes. But he's done a lot since I've last seen him. We're going to talk about that in a second. But firstly, Dan Woolley, welcome along. How are you and what are you drinking?
Hello, mates. Good to see you. Been a long time since I've seen you. I think the last time I saw you was on Isla, which is getting close to, or over to a year and a half, getting close to 2 years now. I am good down here. We are, I suppose, suffering in a less a way than the rest of the world, being so far removed from civilization in Australia. We finally have realised that that is a good thing, that we are so far away from the rest of the world because we're not suffering to such an extent that Europe and the United States of America are suffering. And boy, are the United States of America suffering right now.
Yes. Yeah. Every time we think we're doing badly, America says, hold my beer. And it seems to get worse. So, what have you got in your glass today, Dan?
Mate, I have something that no one else in the world has tasted. It is, I have the bottle here, batch 10 of Highwayman, which I'm going to bottle in about probably between 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, depending on how it goes in the vat. It is a ridiculously complex whiskey, which has taken 6 different casks to produce. It's the first ever whiskey known to humanity that is 100% milled, mash, fermented, distilled, and aged in Byron Bay. And a lot of people will be intrigued about this, especially because this is not actually made on my still. It's made on my good friend Brian Restall's small 500 litre hand-beaten copper alembic stills, which he uses to make his rum at the distillery. So it's different to the whiskey that I will be releasing as my own Highwayman. It's still an independent bottling, but I milled, mashed, fermented, distilled, made the cuts, filled the barrels, etc., etc., etc. So I don't know if you can call it an independent bottling. If I did all that, I just did it on somebody else's equipment.
Right, that's very interesting. So we'll get onto this as well because since I've seen you, you've set up kind of Highwayman whiskey. You're distilling. You're doing a lot of the stuff yourself, as you've just said, pretty much start to finish. What advantages, and I guess there must be pros and cons, in fact, to doing something in such a small batch, limited, and I guess personal way in the way that you're doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely quite cool in the fact that it gives me artistic freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want, with absolutely no one to answer to. A lot of people may be scared of that, but for me, I find it quite exhilarating and exciting working for some really, really large, some of the biggest whiskey companies in the world over the last 12, 13 plus years. A lot of the time, I would want to do some really cool things. And I was 9 times out of 10, if not more, told that's not the direction that brand wants to go in, which can be quite infuriating when you know for a fact that some of these things will be very, very cool. Whiskey lovers will sell them. Whiskey lovers will buy them. Everyone will drink them. We'll all be happy. The company will make money, and we all live a perfect life riding our unicorns upon the rainbow. But, I don't own these huge companies. And, if that's not the direction that brand particularly wants to go in, then I have nothing to say about it. But with me, I can take it in whatever direction I like. I've now released 9 Highwayman independent bottling batches, which are all completely different and super unique. Batch 5, for example, was matured in a combination of red wine and rye whiskey casks. So I started off in red wine casks with super heavy char. They were then tipped, married together, and put into a American oak X rye whiskey cask. And I don't think anyone in the world has ever done a single malt matured exclusively in red wine and rye casks. And it was freaking delicious. Really, really good juice. And that particular batch, it's the smallest batch I've ever done. It was tiny, less than 40 bottles in that batch, and it sold out in under 3 minutes online. So yeah, pretty cool times.
I guess when you do have such small volumes like that, you can be as experimental as you like because you're not worried about kind of how much you're going to sell, are you? Because you know that in those small quantities with something that interesting, it's going to go like that every time.
Yeah, yeah, every single time. So that's the smallest batch I've done. Largest batch I've done is 230 bottles, and this new batch coming up is going to be uh, probably about 240, 250 bottles. And I think that's really good for me. It's a perfect size. That sort of batch will sell out in a couple of days. And at $250 a bottle, which for you would be £125 to sell 250 bottles in a couple of days that's pretty good. Pretty good.
It's amazing, man. To have the infrastructure. You mentioned there that you worked for some of the big companies. I mean, when I met you, you were working for what is being Centauri now, and I'm working for one of the biggest companies around. And you've had your experience in that. And obviously, with what you do now, you have the ability to pivot and move and be very, very kind of mobile and reactive to whatever happens in the industry. Having experienced the bigger side of things, what do you think the roles of smaller distilleries like the one that you will eventually kind of have fully set up for yourself, and a lot of the others that we see popping up both in Scotland and America and now more and more in Australia, what role do you think those smaller operations have to play in the overall huge industry that we are looking at these days?
I think it's undeniable for anyone to even think that these smaller distilleries, myself included, smaller producers, are the future of the industry. The best way to look at that and to be able to see its evidence is the fact that Diageo is investing into brands such as Starward in Australia, such as Westwood in the United States of America, and seeing these little futuristic experimental brands come to life and get injections from the largest spirit company on the face of the earth is just evidence that this is the future. There are a lot of distilleries out there that do things the old way, which I really love, I really enjoy, and I definitely respect because, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing today. And Lafroig's a perfect example. It's been around for over 200 years and it's been doing things exactly the same for over 200 years. And in my mind, it makes the greatest whiskey on the face of the earth. But it's time for even distilleries like Lafroig to have a look at what the new younger generations are doing. Because if you go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years, there wasn't a huge spike, not just in Scotland, but anywhere around the world in distillation, in experimentation, in all of these different hybrid styles of whiskey and other spirits. But now, I mean, you look at virtually every continent around the world and countries around the world, there are now more single malt distilleries in Australia than there are in Scotland. So this is something that huge companies like Diageo, like Brown-Forman, Beam Suntory, William Grant even, are all looking towards. Pernod Ricard, they're all looking at the young guns, the movers and the shakers, and seeing not just what they're doing, but the product that they're selling, and looking to that to be the future and to be inspiration, to be encouraging, to be involved in that kind of whiskey future. I think it's really important to have the younger generation coming up.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we, as you say, we have this platform laid by, well, I guess 100 years of whiskey drinking since the last crash, and we have all the big companies that have laid that, with kind of consistency, as you say, like Freud doing something very similar for 200 years and doing it very well. And for anyone out there who doesn't really get Lafroig, I might have been in a similar boat for a long time. And then I was dipping casks with Dan in Lafroig's warehouse, and suddenly it all becomes a bit clearer. But you have these brands, doing what they do for so long, and then that creates what we now have is sometimes an overpopulated, or can seem overpopulated as an industry. But without those big players, we wouldn't have the consumers that would be interested in your whiskey, surely without these guys laying that groundwork, no one's going to really understand what a red wine / rye matured small batch Byron Bay whiskey is. So do you think it's a symbiotic relationship? Do you think we always need one to have the other?
100%. Neither would exist without the other. 100%. It is essential that we're all working hand in hand. And to be quite honest, I've never seen it work any other way. And I can't see or speak from personal experience of any distiller, either in the old school or the new school, that thinks any other way. We're all very much supportive of each other. We're all very much appreciative of what the other person brings to the table. I've definitely have learnt a lot from John Campbell. I've learnt a lot from Tim Duckett. I've learned a lot from David Vitale. There's so many different people that have come from different styles, different schools of whiskey that I really appreciate, understand, and respect what they do, and I'm really thankful for what they've shown me and taught me. But by the same token, they're really interested in what I have to say. They're really interested in what I'm doing and how I'm experimenting. And, I send samples over to John Campbell in Scotland, over to Islay, for him to nose and taste. And he loves me doing that. And I love getting his feedback. And there's different distilleries and different distillers and different whiskey producers all the way around Australia that I have been doing that with and sending samples to, and they really love getting different samples of different whiskies. And the best way to look at it is if they're understanding and appreciating and really getting into what I'm doing. All of the batches that I've sold so far, 9 different batches and an experimental hybrid micro batch as well, a really small batch. At least I would say round about 10% of all of the sales so far have been to people in the whiskey industry. So they're really, really supporting what I'm doing, which is fantastic.
It's something that I love about whiskey. I think I've mentioned it a few times on this, is that, big or small, whatever you're doing, the amount of time that everyone has for each other is quite phenomenal to me. And I'm never not humbled by people like you giving your time to even this little vlog on a strange corner of the internet. And, I think the shared interest brings us all together on such a huge level. Constantly, we share some amazing experiences. And the next question I was going to ask you was, you've been connected probably more than most to really 4 centers of whiskey making, especially, I guess, between Japan, Scotland, America, and Australia. I'm sure much more. And you've traveled a lot. I'm sure you've done definitely more than most in the whiskey world. Of all those experiences, what's your favorite memory? What's your favorite kind of, when you look back on something and thought, whiskey took me to some location or some experience? I'm sure there are many, but which are your favorite of those?
So that's a really good question, because it makes me think exactly to what you were saying. Would it be something in Kentucky or New York? Would it be something in Japan, the multitude of distilleries that I've been to there and worked with there? And would it possibly be Australia? There's so many distilleries in Australia, and so many distilleries that I've been to in Australia. Must be 30 distilleries in Australia that I've been to alone in the last couple of years. But to be honest, I personally think my happiest memory and the highlight of my whiskey career before launching Highwayman, anyway, because I'm sure there's a lot more to come, I definitely think 3 years of working at the Isla Festival at Fèis, launching the Bamor and the Lafroig Festival bottlings and launching them to the world, because they are some of the greatest whiskies on the face of the earth. They are just simply mind-staggeringly incredible whiskies. And to have the honour to launch them to people from all the way around the world at the distillery, and people, there must be at least 30, 40 different countries represented at these different open days, and to give people the first taste of this whiskey anywhere on planet Earth is just incredible and so humbling, and I'm so honoured to be able to do that. And they would definitely be my happiest, most prized and favourite whiskey highlights so far.
Very understandable. I mean, and I think kind of 9 of my top 10 are probably on Isla as well for various reasons. Even that time we lost the tent where you had to kind of rescue them. That's another story that I'm sure will be covered with Mr. Ross Blady at some point. But to the crux of the matter, to the heart of it all, if you had to go to an island not as hospitable as Isla and take 3 whiskies for the rest of time, of all the drams you've had in your time, what would be the 3 that you'd want to take with you?
That's also a very, very good question, because I really couldn't tell you how many whiskies I've tried in my life. There must be anywhere between, I don't know, 3, 4, possibly 5,000 whiskies, because the amount of single casks that I've dipped the dog into, so to speak, over the last 13, 14 years of traveling to different countries around the world and going to different distilleries. I definitely would have to look at Isla. I think if I had a gun put to my head and was told that I could only drink 3 whiskies on the face of the earth, I think I would have to say the 2018 Bamor Festival bottling of the 19-year-old single Oloroso cask. I remember it's impeccable, absolutely flawless, perfect whiskey. And I remember vividly drinking that with Dave Broom, giving him his first taste of it. And then we had a couple more, and then I actually took my backpack off my back and pulled out a bottle that I had that was half gone, and we then started to drink it from the bottle at the Bamor Open Day. And yeah, I think he was getting a little bit drinky and made a backdoor exit while no one was watching, which was very, very cool. But that particular whiskey, the next day we spoke about it, and Dave said it was his particular pick for the whole of the festival for every distillery on the island. And I've got to agree with him. That was just the most incredible Bamor and one of the most incredible whiskies on the face of the earth. And I would say my favourite Oloroso cask whiskey I've ever had. Moving from there, I would say the Highwayman cask number 11, because it is a heavy char Pedro Jimenez 100-litre cask, and it's just about to turn 2 years old. It has the colour of, noses and tastes like, I would say, between a 12 to 15-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey, and it is just stunning whiskey. And then Mr. John Campbell and I have a favourite cask, and we know exactly where it is and which warehouse it's in. And it is a 1992. So this year at some stage it'll be turning 29. And it is a first fill bourbon cask. It is just possibly the most incredible whiskey I've ever had in my life. It's passion fruit and pawpaw and slightly salted sherbet. It is a ridiculous, ridiculous whiskey. And I can tell you now, over the last 5-6 years, John and I have visited that cask quite a bit. And I think when it comes time to bottling it, there's not going to be a lot left in that cask.
Well, at least you managed to put a dent in it in the meantime. Well, I look forward to that coming to market, even if it's only the 3 bottles that are left in it. But Dan, I won't take any more of your time. I know it's getting late over in Oz, and I really do appreciate it. I'm sure you're up early in the morning making cuts and filling barrels and doing all the good stuff. But look, thank you so much for your time, mate. I do really appreciate it. It's great to see you. And I know you're not kind of on the Isla Trail necessarily anymore, but I hope to see you over here again soon once we can do all that again, and once the face shield's back on and stuff. Really hope to see you for a dram. And as soon as you start sending Highwayman to the UK, you let me know, because I'd love to buy a bottle off you and get it tasted and get it featured on the website. So, mate, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you whenever I can. But in the meantime, take care, mate, and all the best with Highwayman as well.
Thanks, mate. Thank you so much for having me. I will definitely be over your way as soon as this clusterfuck of a planet lets us travel again. I'll still speak to John probably a couple of times a week, and I'll be straight over to Isla. I'll be there for Faish. I'll probably be hosting Highwayman tastings on Isla for the festival. So you might have to come over and lose your tent again.
Mate, sign me up. I'd love to. We'll get Blaney as well. We'll get the band back together.
Cool. All right, mate. Take care.
Take care, buddy. Good to see you.
See ya.